Good afternoon, everyone. In our earlier sessions today, we have discussed service provision, performance assessment and evaluation, and in this session, we have started to shift focus on measurement of outcomes. Periodic reports are prepared as indicators of the extent of service provision, and internal assessments and external evaluations are undertaken to gauge efficiency and effectiveness of operations. I understand that I'm simplifying this, so we have heard a lot about this today, so I'm allowed to do a simplification. Now, at the end of the day, or perhaps I should say at the end of the year or at the end of 5 years, I am certain that we all want some indicators of outcomes of this operation. So in the next few minutes, I will talk about examples of research that we have done to measure outcomes at 2 levels. At the community level, wherein we use Welcomeability Index, a measure of the ability of communities to welcome and integrate immigrants, and at the individual level, using Integration Index, a measure of the extent of the participation of immigrants in society's economic, sociocultural, and political domains. So I now proceed to show some studies that we have done. In our research, we use a framework of analysis that take into account the multidimensionality of the concepts of welcomeability and integration. Welcomeability is indicated by opportunities for the participation of immigrants in the political, social, and economic domains, and availability of features and services that can meet the needs of newcomers in the community. Likewise, individual integration is multidimensional, which in this framework shows the formal and substantial dimensions in the political, social, and economic domains. This also shows some possible indicators of these dimensions, such as voting in election for the political domain, trust in people for social, etc. Measuring multidimensional concepts with possible multiple indicators and with indicators that can be measured in a number of ways generally calls for generating scores and then deriving the index, an index for such scores. Here, for welcomeability and integration indices. Deriving an index has a number of challenges. This table shows those challenges and what we have done or considered in our research to meet them. In the interest of time, I will not discuss them here. So in the 2013 P2P annual conference, some of you might have been there, I showed the results of the study of measuring welcomeability for Ontario LIPS. Today, I showed the results of another similar study on welcomeability, this time using public use microdata file of the 2006 census. Here, the geographic units are Canadian CMAs and non-CMAs, which are larger than the geographic units that we used for Ontario, wherein we made use of the Research Data Center to be able to do analysis for smaller units, that is, at the census division and census subdivision levels that are covered by local immigration partnerships. You can see the number there, but the tables shows the scores and ranks in the economic and social outcomes and the overall welcomeability for CMAs and non-CMAs. Not surprising, the top 3 welcomeability are Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal, and the lowest are the non-CMAs. Our report on this study can be found in the library webpage of the P2P website. Now, I show a map because the numbers are so small there. I just show a map of the top. This map shows the top 10 in welcomeability, with Calgary and Ottawa. There you go, Ottawa is still in the fifth, shown as the fourth and fifth following the first three categories of CMAs. So now let's go to the individual level. What have we done in regards to individual level outcomes? At the individual level, our study derives an integration index for each individual from scores generated for each of the political, social, and economic dimensions. We made an analysis for Ontario using the 2008 General Social Survey on Social Networks. This table shows the average of the individual scores by various categories of interest for immigrants in Ontario. For example, on the average, women are less integrated than men, though they do have a higher score in one of the political domains. Visible minority immigrants are less integrated, though they may feel a stronger sense of belonging than the non-visible minority. Immigrants in the rural areas are as integrated as those in the urban areas, as their low scores in the economic dimensions are made up for by their higher scores in the social and political dimensions. This study can be accessed through, we made this study, and Stellian is one of the authors right there, and accessed through the website of the Population Change and Life Course Strategic Knowledge Cluster. So now, the first two examples made use of existing data sets, namely the 2006 census and the 2008 General Social Survey on Social Networks. Here is an example of a study wherein our research project collected the data. For the Alberta Settlement Survey, we gathered several information not only on economic and social integration, but also on services that immigrants received. Thus, we were able to examine the relationship between service and integration. This table shows the results of the multivariate analysis indicating that immigrants who receive at least one type of service are more likely to have indicated a stronger sense of belonging to their local community. So now, let me move on to the research that we can do. We have shown examples of 3 studies on measuring outcomes for communities, for individuals, and on the effects of receiving settlement services. Now I move on to studies that we can do. So ideally, measuring community outcomes requires data on opportunities, but in the absence of such data on various opportunities that are comparable across communities and over time, we have utilized existing data such as the censuses and community health surveys. The results from such studies seem to be credible and useful. We thus think it worthwhile to do further analysis making use of existing data. For example, to measure outcomes for communities smaller than CMAs, we can use the 2006 census and 2007-8 Canadian Community Health Surveys and the 2011 National Household Survey, even though it may be considered flawed, together with the 2011-12 CCHS, Canadian Community Health Survey. Now, integration index could be derived for individuals using, for example, the one that we have used is 2008 General Social Survey, and or the already released 2013 General Social Survey on Social Identity. And for service provision, of course, we could do analysis of the ICARE data, as Michael already said, and other administrative data. There are, of course, other possible data that can be used in the future. For example, the following: the upcoming census, which we know will be the long-form census, and all this, if they do this, 2018 or survey and focus groups. Given these various data sets, several and different research could be done. They could probably then be brought together through synthesis of various studies. We can do synthesis if you do several of these studies. But another way, and possibly a better way, of bringing together various studies using various data on communities and individual immigrants is to have a comprehensive research that use common concepts, common measures, common geographic units. This would allow, for example, this would allow deriving measures of community outcomes using welcomeability index, say for each area covered by lifts and rifts. Number two, we can obtain measures of immigrant outcomes using integration index, and thus understand the extent of integration of various groups. For example, the young, the elderly, women, language groups, and we could also do this for refugees because some of these data sets, like the 2013 GSS, have now been merged with landing data. Three, we can do analysis of the relationship between community welcomeability and individual integration. That is, if we have a common geographic units. And examining the influence of service provision on individual outcomes. But to be useful for planning and other management purposes, these studies could be done for subnational levels, for example, by regions, and comparison over 2 or 3 5-year time periods is possible. Undoubtedly, a comprehensive research would require resources. Of course, we know that. But which might be worthwhile investing these resources if such research, if the research that I have mentioned, would be useful for policy, program, and other endeavors aimed at welcoming and integrating immigrants. Thank you.